Buenos días, señoras y señores.
Поздрави от България.
Bon dia.
Dobré ráno všem.
Diyev Akaja.
Kalimera.
Dobar dan svima.
Alors, bonjour à tous.
Good morning. Kalimera.
Günaydın.
Hey everybody.
Hello everyone.
Dzień dobry.
Buenos días a todos. Buenos días a todos. Bonjour à tous. Good morning, everyone.
We've got to defend European values, we've got to work for democracy and to protect our fundamental freedoms, which we absolutely need to guarantee. This means respecting international goals, such as the implementation of the Paris Agreement, which is absolutely crucial to the future of our Earth and the climate.
Therefore, we stand here with you today, and we are pleased to be able to debate about the present situation and to build together a brighter European future, our future. Thank you for your attention.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous.
Good morning, everybody. You're very warmly welcome in Strasbourg. It's always a huge pleasure to have an opportunity to have an exchange with young people. So I'm just going to give a brief introduction because I don't want to give you a lecture. I much prefer to have an exchange of views. So ask me any question you want. There's no bars, no holds barred. You can ask anything. There's nothing that you can't ask. So feel free to put forward any questions you want.
En fait, moi, ma question, elle concerne le Brexit.
Well, my question is on Brexit. Do you think that a big power such as the UK leaving the European Union will have major consequences?
Vous avez devant vous un eurodéputé triste.
Well, I'm a very sad member of the European Parliament. I'm absolutely devastated that the UK wants to leave. But at the same time, as a Democrat, I respect the rule of law. I respect, therefore, the vote of the people in Britain. But you're right. We've already begun to see the consequences, not even just begun. We've been seeing them since the time of the vote. I don't know whether they're really going to leave on the 29th or they're not, because Theresa May is now asking for a 3-month suspension of the exit date. And I agree with Mr. Barnier, who said 3 months, but perhaps, but you need to tell us what you want to do. You can't just dither about for another 3 months. If you're going to have elections, that's a different story. Normally, if a European member state is in the European Union, it has to hold elections on the date of the European elections. So this is a big issue. We can't have them participating in the elections and then leaving 1 month afterwards. But we need to see how that could be worked out. Anyway, that's a difficulty of Brexit for the European Parliament. But there are many other difficulties. It's a lose-lose-lose situation. Nobody will win anything from it. On the 9th of November, I met Unite. And they were talking largely about Rolls-Royce because that's where they came from. And Rolls-Royce builds Airbus and aircraft engines. And for the first time, the management had actually talked to them about the possibility of transferring manufacturing of engines to Germany, away from the UK. And this was the first time it had even been mentioned, and that's only a few months ago, because Britain will become a third country if it leaves the European Union, so there will be customs levies on all goods coming from Britain to the continent and from the continent to Britain. And therefore, the Rolls-Royce engines were going to go up in price. I don't know what customs levies will be imposed, but it could be 10, 15, 20%. But the same engine, the self-same engine, is going to cost more. And therefore, you can see that a company like Airbus or Rolls-Royce that Airbus is not going to accept an engine that costs more. It's going to buy an engine elsewhere. And that's why there is a possibility of production, 20,000 jobs, 20,000 direct jobs, not any upstream or downstream ones. 20,000 actual jobs would be leaving the UK. So that's one illustration of the economic impact. And then there's the question of the automobile sector, because the UK produces 2 million cars each year. And many of them are continental operators who are established there and have frozen any further investment. They're waiting to see what happens. There's agreements of this sort, agreements of that sort, agreements that are signed and then backtracked on. And some of the Japanese companies are talking about upping stakes and moving investment back to Japan. And therefore, here again, there's a major impact. It's very sad, but it's also exceptionally dangerous because this is a situation which is the most serious it possibly could be in economic terms, in terms of freedom of movement and freedom movements of goods and people. It's extremely serious. Europe is not a supermarket. You don't just take what you like and leave the rest. You can't have a cherry-picking approach to Europe. You can't just take what you like and dump the rest. You really can't. So I don't know. I don't know whether Britain will maybe reapply to be in the European Union, because I think it's a social tragedy and a human tragedy over and above the economic disaster.
Hallo, mein Name ist Emanuel Berger.
I'm Emanuel Berger from Germany. My question is about Article 11 and intellectual property rights reforms. We're thinking about the protests. How is it going to continue when we have the petition for Save the Internet? And how do you see the extension of Articles 11 and 13?
Alors, à titre personnel, parce qu'effectivement,
from a personal point of view, this petition has been ongoing for a number of weeks now. I'm receiving hundreds and thousands of emails from people who are asking me not to vote in favour of those articles, telling me that, then others saying that you must vote for those articles. So this is an ongoing petition. Let me just say that I feel that all work deserves to be compensated. Now, a few months ago, we were inundated with petitions similar to this, asking us not to vote in favour of those amendments. And we looked to see where those emails were coming from, and about 47,000 emails were coming in from the USA. And not from any old place. They actually came from Silicon Valley. Now, that's a bit odd. Don't you think that's a bit odd? I'm not sure why we would allow the Americans to decide for the Europeans or to interfere with what we decide. But I do understand that these articles could actually pose a problem for some people working in this field. But that's actually been built into the text. Normally it shouldn't pose a problem. So if you're asking the question of me, I would say that I will be voting in favour of Article 11 and 13 because I believe that all work is worthy of compensation, and I think that those people who work on the internet, it's dead easy for them, isn't it? They are earning. These big internet giants are earning hundreds of thousands, and they're not paying into taxes, and they actually are taking people's artistic rights. They're not actually necessarily paying the taxes that they should be paying and the intellectual property rights that they should be paying. So you might be against me, but I would actually vote in favour of that text.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Lucas, je viens de la France.
Hello, I'm Lucas and I'm from France. You said earlier on that you represented France in the European Union, but I want to know whether a third of the amendments have actually been presented by lobbies, and then the European institutions seem to be being manipulated by lobbies when they're drafting these legal texts.
Oui, alors, il faut qu'on s'interroge ensemble de ce qu'est un lobby.
Well, yes, we have got to ask ourselves, what is a lobby? A lobby is a group of is a pressure organisation. A lobby, Greenpeace is a lobby. There are good and bad. What you're right is that we don't have a citizens' lobby. The citizens don't actually have the finances, haven't got the wherewithal to actually organise themselves and sidle up to the members when they're preparing legislation and saying this is what we want. But we have that obligation. We have got to represent you. So if we want to represent you, we've got to listen to you. Now, do we all do that properly? Sadly, I think that doesn't seem to be the case. But the difference between the European institutions and some other states, because don't think that there aren't lobbies acting at other levels as well. There's cartloads of them. There are lobbies who actually get access where they shouldn't have access. But these lobbies that we have in Europe are all written on the list of the register of lobbies, and you as a European citizen know who is a lobbyist and who isn't when we come to the European Parliament. So where we need more transparency, and I do agree with what you said, is that any member of the European Parliament must actually tell us on his agenda which lobbyists he's actually meeting with. But let me just say this last thing. It's not so much the strength of lobbyists that I'm worried about. It's more the weaknesses of our elected representatives, because you're not obliged to cede to the lobbyists. Let me just give you an example. When I came here at first, this is my last mandate, because I'm not going to represent myself for the elections. I established a rule for myself. I will never agree to a breakfast or a dinner or a lunch with anyone. If I meet someone, I meet them in my office, and I'm never alone. I always have one of my assistants with me, and I will only allow 1 hour maximum to anyone who wants to come and talk to me, because you've got to see everyone. And even if you don't agree with the lobbyist in question, if you want to convince him of the opposite, you've got to at least meet him. So if you want to do this democratically, you've got to know what the person thinks to be able to actually overcome their argument. And I will never accept and never agree to a lobbyist coming to say to me, well, Mr. Martin, we have prepared an amendment for you. Why don't you table this? That's not something that I would entertain. So, indeed, lobbyists have got a certain role to play. They have a certain position. But I think it's the weakness of the lobbyists that is important. You're French. If you're French, let me give you an anecdote of something that happened to me a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. A large French lobbyist, and I'm sure you know very well, EDF. And it's not just any old bod. EDF suggested that I go for a week to California to show me their photovoltaic park that they just set up. Now, I don't need to go to California. Show me some pictures. Show me a video. Give me the figures. That's enough. Can a member say no to a lobbyist? Yes, indeed they can. If they accept these offers, then they are collaborating. So I don't ever accept to go off to one of the nice restaurants in Brussels, or no. Of course, they don't think they're going to be able to buy your alliance simply with a dinner, unless you're that cheap. But what they want to do is to create a different climate. They want a friendly relationship with you. They want to have an intimate relationship with you. And as we're all human, if I'm too close to a lobbyist when it comes to voting on legislation, if this is a project that's going to go against that lobbyist's interest, and if in the meantime I've become quite friendly with him, well, maybe I would then say, maybe I'm not going to vote against him. So-and-so's a nice guy, so maybe I won't vote on this amendment which will harm him. So to avoid that type of conflict, I am absolutely strict in my rules. If I have a meeting with a lobbyist, it's for an hour and it's in my office and I'm not on my own. Now this is a principle which is easy to put in place.
We ask for more education and information. Informing and educating the people around you on the dangers of pollution can sometimes trigger a behavior change. Creating public awareness about pollution helps people to develop a desire to protect the natural resources for future generations. For example, you could enlighten people about how their personal actions contribute to stormwater runoff and the dangers of doing so. You can provide people with the necessary skills and information to stop pollution through educational classes or programs. In addition, we talk about the issuing complaints. Reporting people who commit environmental violations to their relevant authorities can deter others from polluting the environment. Such persons will avoid pollution for fear of incurring the wrath of the authorities through penalties. For example, people can call a hotline to register their complaints about any cars that are emitting excessive smoke.
So the first statement is government should control hate speech in media. Censoring only in cases when the hatred speech is being told. In other cases, censoring is not to be approved. Also, there should be an education to detect fake news and trustable sources, and it should take place in schools and universities. The second thing that our team came up with is Citizens of European Union should be free to dress as they wish in educational and working spaces according to gender group they consider themselves a part of. The third thing that our group came up with is one can never be forced to take part in military actions, nor in times of war, nor in times of peace, against their will. And the last is a public person must be accountable for hated speech because one's freedom ends where other freedom begins. Thank you for your attention.
Having a TV debates like we have had here in the morning is a great idea because we easily can get the right answers. We could encourage young people to vote with some kind of online videos, internet pages or something like that, because we depend on mobile phones, on internet and things like that. Also, we need to get statistic informations about what did politicians do well in their job, so in the future we could vote for those who did the most and the best job. Sometimes politicians don't really see the problems in front of them, so I think that they need to use our ideas and listen to us because we are here to help them and get to know with them and the problems. New European Parliament should first take care of young people. They need to take our ideas and talk about them because we are the part of this world.
To start, I will talk about equality in gender. In the workplace, we want to see equal numbers between men and women. To implement this, we were thinking that it would be possible to implement quotas, which would involve limiting the amount of men and limiting the amount of women so that they would be equal in workspaces. We want equal opportunity for everyone in Europe, no matter what background they come from. We also spoke about finding equality in age. The youth and our voices as the youth of the EU are very important. We believe we are not heard enough, and we want equality. With regard to voting, young people are not voting enough today, and we wanted to see more equality in our voices being heard. Without the youth, there is no future of the EU, because we are the future. With regard to cooperation, we wish to unite Europe in the future, even more so than it is already. We want to find cooperation between countries, and we want to build relationships that are structured on understanding and appreciation of the opinions of others. A point we discussed but could not reach a consensus on was the possibility of taking an example from the USA and uniting our countries under one constitution. This would mean that we could consider the possibility of a European army and having EU countries work under the same economic structure. Thank you.
The first one being the educational part, educating the people on both sides, both the immigrants that are immigrating to a specific country, as well as the people that are in that country, to not be afraid of the unknown, to not fear getting to know a different culture or different religions, and to open up the doors of the possibility for a multicultural society without the fear of that being a threat. The second point that we concluded was how to deal with the unsafe travel routes through the Mediterranean, that we have begun to turn a blind eye towards that, although people are still passing through the Mediterranean, because the more time that passes, the more we begin to devalue that thing, although the people who are fleeing, their lives are just as worthy as those who fled a few years ago. So we have come to certain conclusions about that, one being that we help them on the spot, that we don't let them go on these very unsafe rides to Europe, so that we help them at their coast in their country. And the second one being, if they have gone out and on the boats and are heading towards Europe, that once they reach, that we spread them throughout Europe so that not a few countries take on the majority of the immigrants.
We should focus on university programs like Erasmus and FESTs. That can be done by informing the students about the already existing ones, because it is the case many times that there are programs to help students, but the students are not aware of them. We could also expand those programs and create new ones. Our last point concerns university partnerships with companies, so that young people will gain experience and work on the field they're interested in. Finishing their studies by graduating, they will be ready and motivated to pursue a professional career, which will have more possibilities of being successful.